This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 35. It's great when you're finally making enough money to where you can quit your job, pay all your bills, and have a little left over. You can work from anywhere, and you've got freedom to make your own schedule. But one of the problems many entrepreneurs and self-employed people face is isolation. You miss people. Laurel and I have some suggestions, how to prevent it, how to make sure it doesn't happen to you. That's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Laurel, how come you never play Words with Friends with me?
Because I can't spell?
That doesn't matter when you're on a podcast, does it?
Well, I have an engineering background. We cannot spell.
You're a math person.
Unless there's spell check on there, yeah, can't do it.
Well, I got a music background. That's just math.
Why don't they have, like, calculus with friends? I could do that. I could integrate some stuff.
You'd kill me at that.
I would kill you at that. But if I did play Words with Friends with you, I would get slaughtered. It would be really sad, and it would change the whole dynamic of our relationship.
It'd be embarrassing. It'd be humiliating for you.
It would be. You know, I wear the pants right now, and I don't want you to know. I'm just kidding.
All right, here's my Words with Friends username. If you're listening, you want to play me, DH1111.
Wow.
Send the request. I don't guarantee humiliation. You've kind of set me up, Laurel.
I don't know. You do pretty well on
I do
there.
all right. I do all right. I try to play like really smart people.
So you say.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
you could be like, yeah, Laurel, I'm winning. And I wouldn't know the difference. So, but if anyone out there wants to start calculus with friends,
there you go. Laurel is your first buyer of that.
Yeah. Business marketing with friends. I could do that. I could totally rock that. But words with friends, not so much. Even though I'm writing a book, don't let that stop you. I have spell check.
Well, it's funny because think about Scrabble, one of the oldest board games in this country and the most successful. And it used to be something where you would get people together around the same board, same room, and you'd all play together. But Words with Friends, who knows where these people are that you're playing? And you could stay at home for a month, not see anybody, and still play a lot of games. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about isolation because the world is changing. Used to be we had a phone in our house. That's what we had when I was growing up. But nowadays we've got all sorts of entertainment options. We've got all sorts of interactive options. If you want a movie, you get it right away. And if you want to talk about the movie, you can do that right away as well.
So you never have to leave the house.
Never have to leave the house. Same thing for groceries. I prefer that automated checkout myself.
You still have to leave the house to use that.
Well, you got to leave the house, but you don't have to see anybody.
No.
Don't have to talk to anybody.
When I was in high school, I went over to my friend's house, and her mother asked us what we wanted for dinner, and we said, oh, we want some hamburgers. So she called up some service that went out and got us hamburgers from O'Charlie's or something like that. And until that point, I didn't know that anything could get delivered other than pizza and Chinese food. And I was so excited that this person was like going to go anywhere we wanted for dinner and pick us up anything that we wanted to eat and bring it back to the house. And we didn't have to go anywhere. And we just sat there and watched TV, and it was awesome.
That's what happens when you live large. When you start coming into money, they don't even have to deliver. You can call a service and they'll go pick it up for you. And strangely enough, Laurel, I know so many very successful online entrepreneurs that live a complete life of isolation. I know guys that literally have not left their house for a month. I've got one friend, he's got a runner a guy he calls a runner. And whenever he needs something, I went up to his place one time, staying with him, and I forgot my toothbrush. He said, "Oh, don't worry, I got a runner for that." And he kind of rings the bell or summons the runner, however that worked. And next thing I knew, I had 2 or 3 toothbrushes to choose from. I had some floss I put in that order. And good dental care because of this guy.
Nice.
Well, it is nice, but it's also isolating.
It can be isolating. And this is one of the biggest questions actually that I get through people emailing me or asking me questions or asking me to write a specific blog topic is about how do I combat isolation? You know, I used to work a job. I used to be around people all day. And now I work for myself and I work from home and I just don't interact with anybody.
Yeah, don't see anybody.
Don't see anybody. And isolation can be bad because if you get into the routine of being isolated, it can lead to decreased motivation. It can zap your energy. It can cause unhappiness. And also, if it's severe, it can lead to anxiety and depression if you do it for too long.
Well, that's what I've noticed about the folks that I know that never leave the house, even if they're extreme introverts, like I am, for the record. But they get so freaked out, like the world outside is a big bad place just because they've never been there for a while.
Well, I wouldn't call you an extreme introvert, David. You're an introvert.
Introvert.
Well, introvert versus extrovert. I mean, introverts are just people who get their energy from being alone.
I'm not a hermit, if that's what you like. I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi in a cave for 40 years. I do prefer being alone. I like small groups of people. And I think for somebody like me, working by myself for a day or two at a time, it's not a big deal. Like when I was in high school, every year I was always getting into trouble. And we had this thing, it's called in-school suspension. Did you have that where you went?
I wouldn't know.
Laurel went to an all-girls high school.
Yep.
All the good girls.
All the good girls.
There was no trouble there. I went to a public high school, and there was a lot of trouble there. So we had this thing called ISS, in-school suspension, and man, I craved it. Some people went completely insane, though. I loved it. Going off for 3 or 4 days, don't have to talk to anybody. All you do is do your work.
Why were you getting suspended at all?
I got in a fight one time from running my mouth. Believe that.
Shocking.
Yeah,
Shocking.
yeah, that was bad news.
I got a fake pink slip once. The principal just gave it to me to be funny.
What's a pink slip?
You know, you get like 3 pink slips before you get detention.
No, they didn't have any warnings at my school.
Ah.
Yeah, you were there. What are you? You're like a corporation. They got to give you like a written warning.
Got to give you a verbal warning and a written warning. Yeah. Yeah. This was a college preparatory school. Come on.
Yeah, well, yeah, not at where I was. It was off to in-school suspension for me. And I was in there every year. I was real proud of that. I had like 4 years running, and I can't remember. The first time was because I got in a fight. I didn't even want to be in a fight. I mouthed off to him, and then he hunted me down to the locker room.
That does not sound pretty.
No,
so on that note, I'm going to bring it back to introvert versus extrovert. So introvert, people who get their energy from being alone, and extroverts are people who get their energy from being around other people. So I would say that's the main difference between the two. And when you're thinking about isolation or trying to combat isolation, I would consider first, which one are you? Because that's going to make a big difference between how much time you spend around other people and how much time feels comfortable spending alone at home or alone in your office. So that's the first thing that I would consider.
That's right, because the solution really is to prevent this in the first place. Know yourself, know what you need, and make sure that it doesn't happen, because it doesn't have to happen. And we've got some ways to share with you on what we do and what we've found works for other people. I have a rule. It's to leave the house every day. And I got that from an old guy that I met several years ago. And that was his advice to me, and that's served me well.
Old men always give the best advice. Like
Yeah,
he's old, so therefore he's giving good advice.
Well, he'd been doing it for a while. He'd been self-employed for a while, and I was finding these old self-employed guys and saying, how can I make this thing last? And that was his advice to me.
That's something I've done as well. So I know we've talked about this since we met, but I don't think it's something that we set up as our rule or anything. But leaving the house once a day is essential. And you have a lot of routines, David, that get you out of the house, going to the gym, going to yoga, things like that. For me, it might be going to the gym, walking around the neighborhood, going on a coffee date or something like that. Those are ways that I get out of the house.
When you started the book that you're currently working on, you came up to me and you said, David, listen, I have a tendency to go balls out. I don't think you used those words, but I have a tendency to get extreme with a project, and I need you to make sure that I leave the house every day when I'm working on this book, or else I'm going to get so focused on it, it might be a problem.
I think I said, make me exercise.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, this is my problem with writing the book, and I'm not going to go into this too much, but I like to do first thing in the morning is when I do things that that are important to me, that I want to get done and that I want to knock out. So normally before the book, pre-book, that was exercise. I get up, I exercise, I'm done for the day. Great. I can move on and do my work. But writing took place of the exercise. So I get up and I want to start writing first thing so I can knock it out. And then that threw off the exercise, which is something that gets me out of the house every day. So I did ask you to make sure I get my butt out exercising every day, which you have not held me accountable for, but I'm still doing pretty well.
Okay, I'm going to start it today.
Okay.
I'm going to recommit myself to that.
But leaving the house in whatever capacity is really critical to prevent isolation, because that's what you want to do. You want to prevent it and not try to find a cure for it. So you have to get in that habit.
A lot of people recently have been moving their work environment to a co-working space.
I like that idea. Not for me, because I'm an introvert like you.
No way would I do it.
Well, it's not for everybody. And that's for sure. But I think it's a great solution for people, especially extroverts, but also some introverts who like to have that energy of being around other like-minded people in the business world. So even if you're working alone, even if you have your own little office in a co-working space, you still feel like you can have that interaction with other people or play some ping pong or whatever they do there.
Make fancy coffees.
Make fancy coffee.
Listen to music on iPods. I don't know. I haven't spent enough time in those places to know exactly what the day-to-day situation is. I've been in a couple that it's all business. They'll have these big tables, look like kind of picnic tables, big tables, and a lot of people will sit there and they'll just be going at it. They got their headphones on, head to the ground. But I've been in others, as you mentioned, the ping pong table version. So I think that if you have more than one co-working space in your area, search around for exactly what it is that you want. They seem to have kind of different flavors and different elements of interaction. Maybe you'll have more interaction if you want that, and maybe less. Yeah, again, that starts with knowing how much interaction you do want to have with other people. And I think if you don't want to do the co-working space, maybe you don't have the funding to do something like that, maybe a coffee shop or maybe the library would work out for you. So figuring out what is a good space for you to feel like you're around other people and not feel as isolated doing what you do all day long. Speaking of coffee shops, we do a lot of meetings in coffee shops. Oh, yeah. We're in a neighborhood where we can walk to 5 or 7 of them. Yeah, and I just feel like more and more like cool business people are either moving to Nashville or I find out about them here. So there are a lot of people to meet with, that's for sure. Well, that would be one way. Just when you set up your meetings, don't do it by phone. Meet face to face. I think it can definitely not only keep you from being isolated, but it can help that bond that you have with another person. Because the chances are, if that person is an online entrepreneur especially, that he or she may not be seeing a lot of people either.
And I think face-to-face meetings, it's just more fulfilling. Yeah, it takes a little bit more time, but every time I come back